Talofa, everyone. We welcome you to another live digital kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. You have your host, Tuafale here, being the Lone Ranger. Our Mr. Aotearoa is still traveling. He was here in Las Vegas earlier last week. He then traveled to Utah. He's currently, I believe, driving from New York City, the Big Apple, heading towards Ohio, and then working his way towards the Canadian border by Niagara Falls. I'm not quite sure on what his itinerary is in returning to Aotearoa, to Manurewa, but Mr. Aotearoa is very busy, out and about, checking out the scenery throughout the United States, and will eventually make his way back to the land of the long white cloud. In the meantime, viewers and listeners are going to have to settle with me being a Lone Ranger here on the podcast. There's been a lot going on in the world the last 2 days. And, trying to keep a Thursday live digital kava session is something we're trying to have some consistency on, especially with all the chaos that's going on with work, travel, family responsibilities, as we all have, and trying to provide some consistency to our viewers and our listeners. I know a lot of people have reached out saying, hey, what's your schedule for the live digital kava sessions? And as we've shared, this is a labor of love. We try to have these sessions whenever our schedules allow and when the wives allow us to jump online and do the lives. Really appreciate all the support that everyone has given. And one of the efforts that we are trying to make is Thursday evenings, try to have that be our consistent live digital kava session as much as possible. With that being said, Water Bears, our official PR rep for the Polynesian Eyes podcast, and a diligent kava session here with him joining us. He says, Malo Toko, hello from County Jail. Oh, Yahweh. Be out in October. Water Bears, I didn't know the county jail allows you to have access to the net. I've seen some of those reality shows of county jails over there in California, man, and they're like more dangerous than the prisons. So, we're going to throw a whole bucket towards your way, Water Bears, to keep you calm and safe in the county jail, and hopefully you make it out of the digital jail here shortly. Always a huge shout out to Mel. Appreciate it, Malo. And Mel started digging into some of the research she's done from her ancestors and the history for Tokelau and their influence. We will have an episode walking through the research and the efforts that you did. And as always, we always want to take the opportunity to say thank you to our members who contribute on a monthly basis to the channel. She has the S next to her name, and so we always take that time. So really appreciate it, Mel, and thank you for that information you sent over. Water Bear says, Toko, how do I become a member? There should be a button on the channel, Water Bears, that you put in there, and I think it's like $5 a month is the subscription for members. We're going to eventually get a little bit better in providing more member specific content. But yeah, if you sign up, just go to the channel. Maybe Mel knows a little bit better. I apologize. I should be better at this and understand this better, Water Bears. But yeah, on the channel, there should be a become a member button, and click on it, sign up, and that pretty much puts you at the priority of comments, and we will highlight your comments first. So we usually have a live session, what we call a live session, that we jump on TikTok just to kind of give our TikTok followers and supporters there some interaction. Had a lot of great lives before jumping here on the live digital kava session. Today we weren't able to do that, but I justified it by saying we're going to walk through the mentions that we get on TikTok. So the first part of the show, we're going to walk through all the posts and the videos and the comments where people tag us. Some are for us, some are for against us. Don't care, right? We're just trying to have some conversation here. So that's going to be the first part of our program. Is we're going to walk through that, and we're going to, you know, give give some attention to those people willing to take time to tag us. So I'm going to look here. Where are we going to start? I'm going to find the right window here. All right, here we go. We're going to bring this to the forefront here. And this is a common, very common and very active profile on TikTok that really goes out of their way to, you know, what I'm going to say, really say they come with quote unquote receipts. We hear that as a very common theme. We're getting, I think we're getting into the habit of giving the consistent. I admire the consistency by those who oppose our ideas, and I'm not saying we don't like them because they oppose us. I know a lot of people who don't agree with me that I like. I mean, for Pete's sake, I mean, even my own siblings, family, we disagree on a lot of stuff, but I like them. I love them, right? And there are just some special ones, and one of them is Hamoana. I noticed there's an 80 now. I can't remember if they always had the 80, but and I said it without. It's now a reflex. They go by Samoana, but in true fashion of Katamaiki, Kava sessions, growing up in Tonga, everybody gets a nickname, right? And if you, especially if you earned it, not everybody gets a nickname, but if you earn it, you give that individual a nickname. And so Samoana has been officially dubbed by the Polynesian Eyes podcast as Ha'amoana or Hamoana, if you don't want to do the whole Ha'a. So they've been dubbed that name. We've given that name of Ha'amoana or Hamoana to Samoana, dub them, give them an official Ilokava, whatever they want. That's what our ancestors have done for hundreds and thousands of years. You recognize certain people, right? Just like Marietoa, they do something, don't necessarily agree with it, don't necessarily think it was the best choice, the best position, the best idea, but at least you say, hey, kolopenai asi mai. Eh? So, with that being said, our first video is going to be Hamoana, and we're going to kind of talk through that and visit through that video here, and just going along with Mel. She says Ha'amea link loau. Yes, so this video looks to be tied to Ha'amea, and let me see if I can find and give a shout out to, maybe it was Hamoana who tagged us in this. Let me open up a window and see if I can find, so I can give him a shout out. Shout out to the individual. I want to say it was Hamoana. Maybe they got all excited in making the video, and so they said, "Hey, we got to tag the Polynesian Eyes, give them a heads up on this receipt that we just got." Maybe they thought we were gonna shake in our boots, and it was Hamoana. Hamoana was the profile that tagged us. So the creator of the video also went out of their way to tag us. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch the video, make sure I got the sound up. We're good. We'll watch it all the way through, and then we'll come back and do some commentary.
Little love sometime. Rastaman knows the inner deeper feeling. It's the kind of love that holds your heart forever.
I like the song.
It's the kind of love that one would cherish brother to brother. Warrior of love.
Okay.
Warrior of love. Warrior of love. Warrior of love. I'm a Well, the people.
All right. So looks like the gist of the video here is conversation between Hamoana here and Tuitonga Tui. We appreciate a lot of Tui's content online, and so looks like there's a little debate going on. We promote debate. We think debate's good, right? We don't have allergic reactions to debates like a lot of the people out there that really reveal themselves, in my opinion. They reveal themselves by saying, "You can't talk like that. The history and the facts are laid. There's nothing more to be discussed." If you come with an idea that opposes their idea, right? And the allergic reactions I'm talking about is people who respond to different ideas from their own or questions being tossed their way regarding their ideas and their positions by saying, "Hey, stop being rude. Stop being disrespectful," right? Like you're messing things up. When in reality, all they're saying is, "I don't like being challenged." And really, I have thin skin and I can't handle it. But boy, do they want to toss the challenges towards other people. Boy, do they want to figure that out. And I'm getting a little carried away with it. But these are the type of people that I've kind of been really surprised, um, especially from where this opposition comes from. And it typically comes from those who are the first ones to proclaim they want to know the history, they want to study the history, they're trying to figure it out. And yet they're the first ones who say, no talking about history unless it aligns with theirs. So, with that being said, um, we're going to start with what was actually being discussed here. So Hamwana says, just to add to your imagination, laugh out loud, or we won't go through the whole thing there. That would then make her daughter of the Samoan chief Loau, the ruler of the central Tongatapu during that time period. And so it looks like Hamwana here is making a claim of Loau being the ruler of Tongatapu. Maybe I'm misreading that. It's kind of midstream. Looks like they're having a debate. And Tuitonga says no Loau mentioned in Faalupenga Uso. So that's what Tuitonga's response is to that. Don't know too much, to be honest, about the Faalupenga, besides Mr. Atearoa has educated me that these are the formalized greetings that each village or each distinct area in Haamoa have. So it sounds like he's saying that, hey, there's not a official greeting of the Loau in Haamoa. And so that was kind of his response to that. And it sounds like Hamoana is saying the Loau is from Haamoa, right? That's what we're kind of getting here. We're just going to go from where we're not going to, it has to validate for us to go do some more digging. We're not going to go waste our time. And there's a lot of people come and ask us questions like there are, our superiors to, you need to show me this and you need to show me that and find me this. And I'm like, Sharna, if you're really interested and really want to know, there's a beautiful thing called Google. There's Chat GPT, there's Grok, there's AI. You can go find out those things, right? Especially when you come really rude and demand things. That's not how you develop the relationship or have someone go do something for you, right? Unless you have tuitonga power, then it's kind of a little bit different. But apart from that, so that looks like what this conversation's about right here. So that's the first section there.
Lead a love sometime. Rastaman knows the inner deeper
Okay, so
feeling.
right. So we're gonna pause. Looks like he makes a reference here of Lo'au, legendary king of Haamea. Then in brackets is Tonga, of mysterious origin. During the reign of Momo, 10th to Itonga, Lo'au appeared in Tonga. First discovered Kava, looks like there's a star. It'd be nice to know what that star is, and originated the intricate Kava ceremony. Okay, Interesting. So this is the kind of stuff that I find funny, right? So they take at Hamwana and another. Let me see if I see them here. Another commentator or influencer. I don't know. Oh, look there, Paulie Eyes ain't gonna like this. Wow. How? Oh, there's crazy flags. So we also have this individual right here. In true nature of, like I mentioned earlier, this individual, because it doesn't have any letters, just has flags, looks like the independent Samoa, Cook Islands, maybe flag. Is that like the Palestinian flag or some kind of Middle Eastern flag? Iraq or something? Syria? I don't know. Has another flag in there mixed in there. So this individual who quote unquote always bring receipts like these receipts right here, where they make these bold claims that they've won the battle, right? Or even worse, they've won the war. When at best it's a battle. It's like Tuna and Fata. We have a little battle, little scuffle, little brotherly competition and love. And let's say they land a punch and the story goes around they've won the entire war. And the question is, it was never really a war at the first place. So here we're going to dissect this real quick before we go any further. So first off, they're saying the Loau is from Tonga, but it looks like they're taking the position here that the Loau arrives in the 10th Tuitonga time, right, of Momo. And that's when the Loau mysteriously appears. There's a problem with that. Is Loau or the Haamea arrives at the very beginning of the Tongan / Polynesian civilization. The Loau is also the Taula or the Tufunga, right? It's the religious, it's the civilization building entity. So you have Tangaloa, who is um, the kingly branch of the civilization, also has a connection to the priestly side because there is a connection to Hikureo through Tangaloa. You have the Maui clan, which is the navigator clan. This is also the scientific and astronomical arm of the Polynesian Empire civilization. And then you have the Loau or the Taula and Haamea clan, right? They have the priestly role, they have the civilization building, the mound building role and responsibilities. And so I don't know where this reference is coming from. It's a snippet, and this is what they always do. Um, they say, "Hey, look, this is evidence," and then they run with it, right? Take it out of context, probably. Really doesn't explain much. They're just assumptions that are made from this. It's like, hey, look, the Loau magically appeared during the Tuitonga's time. Um, Tuitonga Momos. So it's like, no, that's not the case, right? The Tongan, ancient Tongan um, oral history says the Loa was there from the very beginning. So that's something that's really important to take into account. So discredit that. I don't know where this comes from. It doesn't seem accurate, right? So the Loa appeared in Tonga, first discovered kava. Okay. Now, I, let's just think about this. If it's the 10th Tuitonga and Loau shows up and discovers kava, so why is there a kava bowl in Aho'etu's oral history of when he is um, consumed by his brothers? They're told to, you know, regurgitate that out, get that out of their system, put in the kava bowl, put the noni leaves, and Aho'etu comes out. How is it that there's references to kava there? How is it then that a Furitaunga is structured by Tangaloa to Aho'etu if kava didn't get discovered until Tuitonga Momo? right? I saw some of the other comments. It's like, yeah, see, I knew the Ha'amoa people brought the kava ceremony to Tonga and they brought it through Lo'au and blah blah blah. Well, dude, relax, walk it back and think about it. How is that accurate? Maybe that's why there's a star there. Maybe there's a star there saying, hey, there's contradicting oral history on this, right? But it's saying here and originated the intricate kava ceremony. So once again, there is a lot of inconsistencies there, a lot of unknowns there. So once again, the receipts by Hamoana and crazy flags and all these crazy people out there is like your receipts, not really receipts. A couple comments here from our subscribed member Mel. She says, "So is Loau le Fanonga Tangaloa San Kava origin." So the position we take here, Mel, from the Polynesian Eyes, is actually that Loau is part of the Taula clan or responsibilities and is one of the three clans that originates the Polynesian civilization. So, kind of mentioned, there's Tangaloa, the kingly clan. You have the Maui clan, which has the navigation or the scientific and the astronomical knowledge. And then you have the Taula and Loau slash Ha'amea clan that has the religious execution or administrative religious authority and power. And then also they provide um, the civilization building. That's where the mound building concept comes from, if that makes sense, Mel. So, with that, couple more comments here. It says context was there is a post on Tui saying, according to AI, Moana would have been the wife of Momo given the time window. Some Hamoana, and you may have missed this, Polly Prince, but we've renamed Hamoana, Samoana as Hamoana or Hamoana. You know, they're definitely one of those that consistently bring receipts to us. So we have given them we said Ilokava earlier, but we'll just give them a little kapainu, just a little gathering and give them a new name, Hamoana, to that. Okay, so that's the context. So they're having a discussion of the timeline of the story of Moana and when that would happen. So I appreciate that, Polly Prince. Finyanga Nofo 488 says, sorry, Toko, late to the party. What source is the text from? That's the funny thing, Fine. We have no idea. They just pull this text from who knows where and then give it a very, very out of context interpretation, probably. I mean, I don't know where it's from, but this is a response in a video that we were tagged in, trying to tell us that these are receipts of Tonga originating from Ha'amoa. So we'll walk through it. So we've walked through this little receipt right here that really doesn't make sense and has a lot lacking from our perspective.
It's the kind of love that holds your heart forever. It's the kind of love that one would cherish brother to brother. Warrior of love.
All right. So let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. Let's take a different setup here. Let's see if this. Okay, so this makes it a little bit better. So if you can see here, it looks like it's a faleula type of fa'alupenga here, and it says afio mai loau. The translation is respectfully greeted loau, and it says si telea. Loau descended from Saluafata. Okay, so now they're trying to make the connection of Tuitonga Momo. He introduces Loau, like we mentioned, makes it sound like it is a new concept, a new role, new responsibility that didn't really exist before, and it's being brought to the table. And then now says there's maybe some kind of fa'alupenga that references and says they come from that village or area in Ha'amoa. And therefore, Loau is from Ha'amoa, and therefore the kava ceremony and Tonga originate from Ha'amoa. So that's the logic. That's the logic. And like I said, we've already covered the weaknesses and kind of the poor logic that provides, but that seems to be the position there, which we dispute heavily.
Warrior of love, warrior of love, warrior of love.
And then we end with in Haamoa, there is the current Lo'au, Keneti Sio. Okay, so we have an individual, maybe has a Matai named Lo'au in Haamoa, but they also say they have Tangaloa in Haamoa. And therefore they say Tangaloa and Lo'au come from Haamoa. So the challenge with that is, if that is true, that Lo'au is from Haamoa, and they are the ones who instituted the kava ceremony, and we've covered this very extensively, but we'll revisit it as needed for Crazy Flags and Hamoana. If that were true, I would assume, unless they show me otherwise, that Lo'au also established the Ha'amoa's Ava ceremony. And when we ask Ha'amoa what their Kava ceremony is based off of, the best that I have been given is that it's based off of the Fare, the Samoan Fare that has the posts in circles. And then, that signifies the matais, every post, and how it holds up society and so forth, right? And then we compare that to the kava ceremony, which we've made the connection that Lo'au is from the very beginning of the Tongan and Polynesian civilization of Tangaloa, Maui, and Taula or Lo'au. And that the kava ceremony was referenced since Ahu'etu, and that Tangaloa established a kava ceremony for Ahu'etu from the very beginning, right? By structuring where everyone sits, the responsibilities of the brothers and the organization. It's basically mapping out a heavenly order that is to be reflected in the earthly realm where Ahu'etu and his brothers are to reside, and to establish roles and responsibilities to drive all efforts moving forward. How does that fit in with this whole position that's being narrated here of Lo'au coming from Ha'amoa and discovering of Kava through the 10th Tu'itonga, which Momo is way, way later than the 10th. We won't even get into that. Those lists do not portray the true length of the Tu'itonga, as David Tafale's list is probably the more extensive list, and he ties each Tu'itonga to each settlement of the Tu'itonga, and even he admits that's his best effort to really solidify a reliable Tu'itonga list, because you can point to specific landmarks and langis and locations to history that is named in those areas that are tied to Tu'itongas, and his list is much, much longer than the Catholic and the Shirley Baker list. But anyways, number one, appreciate Crazy Flags here, right? Crazy Flags here providing their quote unquote receipts, and also Ha'amoana for tagging us. But once again, the receipts really aren't receipts. They are just facades of a receipt, and really, really don't hold a lot of water with that. So with that being said, we'll close the chapter on that one. We are going to go to the next quote unquote receipts. And I'm going to go back to this one to try and verify who tagged us in this one. Oh, this one is from Crazy Flags. So like I mentioned, we got to give these guys names because they're just so special, right? They're just so special. They're the guys who complain about the kava circle, but then they're the ones who come and drink kava for free all the time. Inu te ngā ikoa. And so we're gonna celebrate them. We know in the village, we have to live with these individuals. We know te ngā ikoa all the time. You know, the whakapaheke everywhere, and just do their own little thing. You know, first one to complain, last one to give a lending hand. But we love them. What else are we gonna do? They're our brothers and our sisters. Eh? If we don't love them, who's gonna love them? So this one's from Crazy Flags. And let me see. Oh, it looks like Tutui posted this. And it says, so this is where Crazy Flags. Yeah, this is a Crazy Flag. Tingai Koa's comment here. So he says, what happened to 50,000 years old? So I'm not going to pull up the video, but they're laughing because they're referencing a video that we found online of a Palangi who, you know, has a YouTube channel, and he makes observations and looks at cool monuments around the world. And he comes across the Ha'amonga. And he comes across the Ha'amonga and he's fascinated by it, right? He's like, how come nobody's talking about this thing? This thing's massive. It's in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere, right? And then look at this thing. And then he's talking about this gentleman. He's talking about, hey, what's a way that we can date this thing? Because it's this huge megalithic structure, and it's in the middle of the ocean. It's not well publicized. A lot of people don't talk about it. And what cracks me up the most is a lot of these scholars and, you know, Westerners and a lot of Polynesians, even Tongans. The best they can come up with was it was a door. It was a door to the Tu'itonga's settlement. And there was a settlement of the Tu'itonga there. You know, Momo and Tu'itatui were in there. And for all those crybabies who say, when we say, hey, there were Tu'itongas who married Hawaiians, Momo was one of them. There's probably many more, but the most infamous, or I guess maybe not infamous, Tu'itatui was somewhat infamous, but a well-known was Tu'itatui and his mother Nua. If I remember correctly, that's the half Tongan, half Hawaiian Tu'itonga, right? And so, just so all of our Ha'amoa brothers and sisters who try to say that, oh, the Tu'itonga had to marry to Ha'amoa to keep the bloodlines and all those things, and if not, Tu'itonga was useless without the Ha'amoa blood ties, sacred blood. Well, there you go. At the absolute height, supposedly, you know, the height of the Tu'itonga Empire, a Tu'itonga that was half Tongan, half Hawaiian takes the lead, if I remember correctly, right? And it's funny, Tu'itatui's name was Tu'itatui, but it was also Tafeta or Tafeta. And it's quite interesting that when Hape comes with the missionaries, the two Tahitian guys who come from Eastern Polynesia with the missionaries to Tonga, and Tevi Tafale, the founder of the Polynesian Eyes organization, he notes that it's interesting that hundreds of years later, that when the missionaries come, there were two Tahitians that come with them. One was Hape, who was a little bit preferred by the Palangis because he was much more helpful, right? He was much more helpful, more willing to engage in physical labor and so forth. And rumor has it that they weren't super excited about Tafeta. And it was because Tafeta was a little bit more of ali'i or eiki. You know, we use the term eiki, and we claim that ali'i is a morphing of the term eiki in Eastern Polynesia. And so they're not too excited about Tafeta because he comes from a little bit more of a chiefly line. And it's interesting that that's also Tu'itatui's name, right? And that Tuitatui has blood ties to Eastern Polynesia, and wonder if there's a connection with that. That Tafeta um, could be a descendant of Momo or Tuitatui from the close ties that he has, blood ties to Eastern Polynesia. But yes, so with that being said, so that's where this is going, right? So the comment that Crazy Flag says here, hey, what happened to 50,000 years old, right? They came with, they thought they had us with a gotcha. We gotcha, right? Because you said there's a possibility of 50,000 years old. And I don't think I finished. We're weaving here. The whole logic that this gentleman that was, fascinated with the Ha'amonga was there is documented scientific way to measure the weathering of stone, and each type of stone has its own weathering patterns, right? Where the stone slowly disintegrates or weathers over time. And so this gentleman said, hey, well, we have that scientific information. And he looks at the Ha'amonga, and you know what? Maybe I'll pull this up. We'll pull this up. He looks at the Ha'amonga and he says, wait a minute. Let me get a side view picture. Okay. Yes. Well, actually, we'll look at this. I don't know what this looks like. It's a Facebook video. We'll share this tab real quick, and I'll see if I can stop it. So he's looking at it. He's fascinated with the Ha'amonga, and as he's kind of looking at it, looking at different pictures, he's looking at different videos, and come on, we need it to kind of give a side view. It's kind of shown right here, but if he comes across, we'll pause it right there. Where is it going to go? Come on, right there. Okay, so he pauses it right here. He sees an image of the Ha'amonga, and he notices, look at how the horizontal stone is tilted, and there's excess space here, right? And so he looks at that and he says, wait a minute. These guys are building these massive structures. He says, it doesn't make sense that they would do all this sophisticated work and they couldn't carve the stone to fit relatively snug and up straight. So he says, you know what? Maybe it's slanted because it's weathered over time and it's led to this loose fit. So he went back and he did, just a few calculations, and he comes up with the weathering. Let's see, maybe it's worthwhile to ask Grok here. We'll ask our digital assistant here to see if they can find real quick what is the weathering pattern over time to measure time of limestone. We'll have the digital intern go through that, but let's see what it comes up with. Let's just show you guys what I'm looking at. So I asked Grok real quick. So, it shows there's a rapid, it goes through the process of weathering here, the reaction, water, sunlight, right? Rainfall. I'm trying to see if it can cracks over years, leading to biological weathering, short-term years or decades. Okay, so surface recession rates typically range from 0.01 to 0.1 millimeters a year, right? So, and then over millennia, he says tombstones may lose 1 to 10 millimeters. So anyways, he takes this scientific approach right here. Then he goes back and he takes a look at the gap here and says, pretty sure these people, if they can build these large structures, they probably would have had that horizontal piece flat and snug, and it probably weathered. And so when he looks at it, did some, eyeball or whatever you want to call it, he says, dude, this thing could be 10,000 to 50,000 years old. We reacted to that and say, hey, is that a smoking gun? Well, no, but I think it's a reasonable position to take, right? This guy used a scientific piece of information, used some common sense, and said, if you can build these sophisticated structures, you probably would have built it to standing up straight and snug fit for the horizontal piece. And using the weathering pattern over years, centuries, decades, he comes up with a 10,000 to 50,000 year old structure. And so this is what Crazy Flags over here is talking about, right? We said that, and so they run with it. Oh, they said for sure. It's like, hey, okay, sure. We're willing to back it. We think it's a reasonable position to take. So once again, we gotcha. They got a gotcha moment, right? So we're going to watch this video, what they're talking about. And
presumption in the year 1200. 1200. That's this one. Oh, this one. Make my next child 7 foot tall.
Okay. So this says this was found near Ha'amonga, Maui. Presume it has belonged to Tu'itatui and his children when they built the Ha'amonga monument in the year 1200. So, once again, there is a very common or accepted thought out even amongst some of the Tongans that the Ha'amonga was built by Momo and Tu'itatui when they came over there, right? And therefore, the logic of this I don't know what this is, this typed piece of paper, based off of that logic, is they found a stone axe from that area, and they say, hey, this possibly could have been owned by Momo, Tu'itatui, and they were there around the 1200, 12 to 1500-ish, and they probably used this to build the Ha'amonga because the Ha'amonga was a giant entrance or door into the compound. So that's one idea. That's one thought. The other thought is from Tevita Fale, from his research and tracking all the different movements of the Tu'itonga, and the fact that when it went from Tangaloa to the Tu'itonga, there was a very, very deep history of Tangaloa being the ruler, Maui clan being the scientific and the navigational and the astronomical carriers of knowledge. They built the Ha'amonga, and that it was directly tied to Maui and the Maui clan, and that the Maui clan has, I want to say 2, possibly 3 settlements in the eastern districts. There's even a Ha'amonga in the ground near Nabutoka, where it's a Ha'amonga shaped mound in the ground. And Devita Fale has shown that the Ha'amonga is a very important constellation, critical for navigating not only any time of the year, but in the northern and the southern hemisphere for 6 months out of the year. And that's why the Ha'amonga is in the shape it's in. And that the Ha'amonga wasn't a door to enter a compound for the Tuitonga, that it was a navigational tool to measure the seasons, to track the movement of the sun, to track the movement of the stars, to determine when the best time was to plant certain crops, when was the best time to travel in the year, right? And to track how long people have been gone since they left for a certain period of time. And so with that thinking and tracking of all the Tuitonga movements, De Vita Fale came to the conclusion the Ha'amonga has high probability of predating not only Momo and the Tuitatui, but predating the Tuitonga itself. And that is from the era of Tangaloa and Maui and Lo'au and Ha'amea, who were the founding fathers, as we say on this show, the founding fathers of the Polynesian Empire. And so this gets funny, right? Like there comes a point where you think like, that's why Crazy Flags here gets dubbed a name, and we get guys like Samoana, we say, hey, ato hingoa fo'o, Ha'amoana, right? You get those names. Because you've earned them. You've earned those names, yeah, right? It's like you are asking to get hingoa fratene. And so we give them that. So the logic here is, hey, look, they found a stone axe from Tuitatui, probably from the Tuitonga there. And therefore, the Ha'amonga must be 1200s. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I listen to the Palangi guy here, and he talks about weathering of stone over time, and how if you're building these large megalithic structures, that you would have made it snug to make it look, to match the complexity of what's going on. And then you measure the gap of the weathering, and that's a potential way to date it. I'll take the Palangi guys over this Crazy Flags position here and the logic in the video. And this is the same mistake they do at the Pulemele Mount, by the way, right? Just like the Ha'amonga, they have the Pulemele, and just like in both locations, there's human activity going around. Some predate the structure, some after the structure. But then they find, like, for example, the Pulemele. The Pulemele itself, they've done carbon dating on the post at the top of the Pulemele and so forth. And they say, hey, that's around 12 to 1500. That's the time of Momo and Tuitatui and potentially even Kaulfo Nuafekai. Dates at the height of the Tuitonga. But then they find Lapita activity, civilization, human activity that were thousands of years before. So what do they say? Oh, the Pulemele is thousands of years old. Well before the Tuitonga and so forth. And therefore the Pulemele is thousands and thousands of years old. Right? Those things are just because they're correlated doesn't mean there's cause and effect. Just like finding a stone axe next to the Ha'amonga during the Tuitonga period doesn't mean that they built the Ha'amonga. So once again, here's another quote unquote receipt and gotcha that we got, and this is all the way back in August. We've been tagged on these. We've been talking about a lot of other things. So we really haven't had time to go and debunk all these. We usually just comment and say, this really doesn't mean anything, man. It's a waste of time. I don't even know if I commented on this. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. And there we did. We did comment on it, and we've kind of moved on. So anyways, so that one's done with that. I don't know. And there comes a point where these quote unquote receipts and this is our comeback, this is our gotcha. And every time it's like, these little gotcha moments are kind of getting old, because it's like, man, at least come with something that makes sense. something that has a real meaning behind it, right? And so that, let's see here. Let's do this one was actually kind of more of a pro support, and it looks like let me see who tagged us on this. Somebody tagged us. Oh, there we go. Jordan Tofa Halaifo Nua. So he tagged us on this all the way back in May, right? Appreciate the tag here. And we actually have a 2-part series on this. This is some context on this. So there is a group. They do like this seminar online. A lot of it is hosted by Hawaiians and Tahitians. They do it in English, and then they also translate it into French. And they have these people speak and present, and they have listeners. So it's kind of cool. It's a cool idea that they do. But we did a response to this gentleman, this Dr. Refiti. He's done a lot of studies in Ha'amoa, the Pulemele, the Siaheulupe, the star mounds and oral histories that he shares. And like we talked to a lot of these people who have allergic reactions when we share Tongan oral history and Tongan history and Tongan perceptions of the Polynesian Empire, and dare to say that there's a strong evidence for the Polynesian Empire originating and civilization originating from Tonga. They have these allergic reactions, like there's not Samoan oral history that also pushes towards Tangaloa coming to Ha'amoa and Ha'atupunga and some of these important figures in Polynesian history not originating from Ha'amoa. Like there's lots of oral history to that. They just deny it and pretend like it doesn't exist. Just like when we looked at the Pulemele, where they interview the people who grew up there, and they're like, yeah, this is a new term. We've never heard the term Pulemele before. And actually, we grew up and we were told that this was the Pa'atonga, and that the structure, the big mound, the Pulemele mound, was where the Tongans stayed and ruled, and when they came. And so we don't know where the term Pulemele from. We've never heard that. And even the gentleman who farms this area, who's been here for forever, he even says he doesn't know what Pulemele is, and that the oral tradition forever and ever has been, this is the Pa'atonga, and the Tu'itonga resided here. And this was like a compound for whenever the Tu'itonga visited Ha'amoa, or at least that part of Ha'amoa. So let's play this video, and I appreciate, we'll give him a shout out again, Jordan for tagging us here, and we'll give this a watch.
They weren't called a tufunga then, they were called Sa Tangaloa, meaning that they were sacred to Tangaloa. The tufunga, who were the holders of the tufunganga, the sacred tool bag, they came to Manua and they secretly built a faleula for the Tui Manua. And the Tangaloa Langi, the progenitor, when he discovered that the tufunga had done this, came to Samoa, destroyed the house, and scattered the men. So Samoa have this tradition where the tufunga are thought to be their relations. They are the people from heaven, from Langi Tuaiva, and therefore they were considered not Samoans. They were foreigners, and therefore they were considered not Samoans. They were foreigners. So there is always this idea of tufunga as an extra person, or a person foreign to Samoa. So there is always this idea of tufunga as an extra person, or a person foreign to Samoa.
Interesting, and then it looks like he pauses it here, and he references on the Ha'amoa page where it says, one legend tells that Tangaloa had 2 children, a son Moa and a daughter Lu. Tangaloa's daughter Lu had a son, also called Lu. Young Lu argued with his uncle Moa and fled to earth, which he called Samoa, right? Just kind of like some oral history there of the settling of Ha'amoa and the origins there. So this is kind of interesting. They're saying that Tufunga wasn't from Ha'amoa, and actually there were things built for the Tu'imanua that were not authorized, that were not under the purview, or not purview, but the authority of Tangaloa, that were done, and it led to some issues there. However, so that's kind of interesting, right? So at one end, they're saying the lo'au, the builder, the crafts person, is from Ha'amoa and went and set up the kava and so forth for the Tu'itonga. But then you also come here and they say, you know, the Tufunga is not from Ha'amoa. And in this same video, this Dr. Rafiti says that there's some genetic, they did some genetic studies, and they show that a foreign genetic marker is inserted into the local population at some point. And he makes the claim, I don't know where he gets it from, but he makes the claim that that's when he believes the Tangaloa clan come to Ha'amoa and this new genetic markers are introduced. So it's interesting. That's something that is also you know, an interesting trend. So once again, in this video, there's enough oral history even within Ha'amoa to challenge these other people who promote Ha'amoa as an origin or the cradle of the Pacific. And so these people act like there's no evidence for the Tu'itonga and the origin of Polynesia from Tongatapu. That they act like there's none of that even in Ha'amoa, but there's actually some strong evidence. As always, as a subscribed member of the channel, Mel, she says Atafu is referenced in this video too. I did see that, Mel, that especially in that paper that you wrote, Atafu is an important thing in your references to Tokelau and Polynesia. Hopefully we'll continue. Once I get through all the research you've done, we'll try and put together a program to kind of walk through your research and your studies there. So with that being said, we're going to go to the next one we were tagged on. And this one we did a little bit more work on. And this video, it's kind of shared here. We've seen a lot. This guy, this Bobcast 801, he seems to be getting a lot of traction. And Mike Oxmall tagged us on this. And before, so they tagged us in it.
I think Doha is like a
and so it has to do, and we've seen this Tongan young lady here. She's made some waves on certain things about the Toa, and we'll press play here.
watered down version of prostitution.
Go show.
And then he responds to it, right? So this gentleman responds to Akanesi's clip on the topic. Before we go on, before we go too far, Mika, I want to thank Mika. He's also a subscribed member of the channel. And so whenever we see our subscribed members make a comment, we do want to recognize them and thank them for their support. So he says, Ha'atafu is originated from Tokelau. So Mika, that seems to be something that Mel, in her research and in her efforts, seems to see that same connection. I haven't dug into it to get into the details, but that's something that we've heard from Mel and her efforts, and I'm assuming when we go through her research, it will be recognized, or we'll kind of share more of that. And Mika says, Malo tua. No, thank you, Mika. Appreciate the subscription. Invite all of our listeners and viewers. It's a way you can contribute and help us with the efforts that we're doing. You know, use the super chats, and also great ways to become a subscribed member, and you get priority in your comments when we have our live sessions. So before we jump into this gentleman's response decided, it was like, well, let's go figure out what was the actual video, because he only does a snippet of the video. So we went, and I'm gonna see if I can, where I saved it. Okay, I found it. So we're gonna watch Akanesi's. She has a pretty established podcast. Seems like she's done well for herself. Um, she's building a following, and that's great. You have conversations, people have ideas with what they want to think and share, and let's talk about it, right? Don't want to always give them something to talk about. We want them get talanog he me alere me aunga and aha me ma lumai. Yeah, give them something to talk about, but hopefully good things. But let's watch her original video that it looks like he is this Fobcast 801 is
I think
to.
Doa is like a watered down version of prostitution, because women get paid to serve men in the Faikava, and they get preyed on mostly by married men. Why are married men looking for single women to Doa? Now, this is the problem in the Tongan tradition. Sinful traditions that need to stop. They say this is a tradition from generations to generations.
Man, we've getting this. I'm going to pause it real quick. Very provocative here, but let me see if I can answer this question. So we're going to pause here. Apologize. This is not the norm here, but UTOL appreciate it. He says, how to become a member, Toko? Looking for the join button. Haha. Yeah, I'm trying. Let me see if I can be helpful here. We'll try and see how we can be a little bit more helpful here. So view your channel. You know what? What I'm going to do is, don't want to bore you guys with it, but that's an important question. I'm going to make a separate, just a short clip, and figure out how to answer that question and send it out as a short video to everyone to kind of give some clarifications on how to subscribe UTL. But I appreciate that that support there, UTOL. Malo. So let's come back to our sister Akanesi here.
In Tonga, it is the tradition, it's the culture. But I think we need to revisit these traditions, because if they cause marriages to break up and married men to prey on young women, then why are we still allowing them? And this is how men are sexualizing women in Faikava today, flirting and sexual comments against a young woman, turning the serving role into an entertainment rather than a respected duty, blurring the line between service and sexual attention. It's not even funny anymore. If you are not Tongan and you don't know what I'm talking about, here are some videos that shows, what I'm talking about in the Faikava that's happening today.
Very, very interesting. Looks like she has weekly episodes Wednesday. So she probably released a video yesterday. And, this is cool. She's pretty organized. She does a good job. She's articulate here. Maria.
I think though
Interesting. So she is isolating this is not a new debate or a new idea. I've heard this since I was a little kid. Growing up in Tonga, that sometimes the toa is viewed kind of negatively. But that negativity or that kind of stigma has kind of eased from my perspective, just kind of looking at my growing up and hearing about that. It's interesting. I mean, I've heard, and I've observed firsthand some of the negative things. of Doa and so forth, but there's a lot of positives as well. You know, a lot of these Doas and stuff, they raise money, whether it's for school, for family, for any type of kaveinga maybe that there is. These are ways to kind of raise money. We're gonna let's rewatch this. Let's rewatch this and kind of walk through her video. Or actually, we'll stop there. We'll stop there, and we're gonna go back and listen to Fobcast. We're gonna go back to listen to Fobcast, um, and get his take. And then I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back and rewatch the video and go kind of statement by statement and kind of get a reaction to each of those statements that she makes, and kind of go from there. So let's go back here. Let's restart. Oh, I'm being told there's no sound. What is going on? How come I can hear the sound? Okay, no sound. I do not know what's going on here. No sound. No sound. Everyone is telling me they're not hearing sound. Hopefully, we're not having technical difficulties here. Maybe I'll refresh this. Oh. All right. All right. Yeah, it looks like I just got a note here. We're gonna have to unshare and then share the screen again. Hi, technical difficulties. Mahala na fu malo hi loto mama he computer. Kala no behe ye to. So let's see if I can share this again. And I'm going to play the video again, guys. Just give me a heads up if for whatever reason you cannot hear the audio.
I think Doa is like a watered down version of prostitution.
Ko siya o ke ki fia poto. Ua kai uhinga ha o uhinga. Pea tolo o kai ke whakamama whai ai whiri whakafo i tui.
Let me know if you guys aren't hearing the sound.
Koe whai kawa tau pehe ko tau a. Koe whiria e tahine ko ia. Peka pau ia tahine o ku tau pehe whetu taki mai kia te au pe ko ha. Toko tahu ne whakarere ha kalapu o ku whia alu o toua. Koe whiria ha ana. Peka pau o ku sinkolo o ku mari. Koe me atau ataina ia e toko taha ko ia. Ko ha me o ke o hofi ai koe ai kau tau a. Pea moe kau whai kawa. O tala i ho o video koe sinful tradition. O ku whakalao e whai kawa. O whakalao ai tau a. Ka pau ko ho uhinga ia pea moho o mahino. Whewhe rewa ai kau taki o siasi e ngai siasi ke heke. Pea mo ki nau tolu tau pehe o nau mālohi i here siasi o nau kau ki ai. O ku nau hoke ngai polokalama siasi mo kolo. Pea nau whakahoko e ngahi anga o tau pehe o nau riaki e nau ngahi hoa o whaangaka nau o nau tolu mo. Ko ngahi polokalama ia pehe o whakalao. Pea o ku sai mo rerei. Ka kei hoko pea ngahi mea kovi. Heka ke tau tuka ke tau tau ria e lotu Polo kalama e kolo ko konseti mo ha tatau te fito ke tau a po fai kava. Ko pau ke tau foki pe ki he whiri whakafo i tui ai toko taha ko ia. Hangene na ke tupu ke koe ha foi ana i maka koe ke mahi no i e mea ko ia.
Hey,
Ko toko taha
Maria.
ko toa pe koe ke hao. Pea mahau kovi ho siwa koe ke he tau ana au mahana te ke tā ato hata hai ke alu ko tau a pe koe ha. Ka koe whiri whakafo i tui ia e toko taha ko toa pe. Pea te ke fuhoa mai koe ke te au na ke
So, just for those who don't speak Tongan, he's challenging her characterization of the toa, which is, when someone gets a woman gets invited to come and serve the kava, and sometimes they'll ask her to sing, they'll ask her to dance. She's providing entertainment and so forth, and he's challenging and saying, "Hey, how is this a huge problem? Why is this a big deal for you? It's legal, and so what? Will you have issues with pastors or leaders in churches who go and do church responsibilities and so forth and end up leaving their wives and leaving their children and not, giving them the proper attention and saying, hey, or he kind of takes a jab at her and says, hey, is this because nobody called you to come out? And just kind of, he's really challenging her to say, why is this such a huge issue? And why aren't you, understanding that there are weaknesses and issues everywhere, but you want to single out this one single thing. So that's what he said so far.
Ko pau ke alo ki e wat ke to a mo ki whakawhari at na pehe to a kua fuwari au ke wala ko tau ko sio no a tu peki ai. Kakai ai mua mo uhinga ke o te mo tā pola sia i polo kalama mo ngahi fiohi anga o fi ai.
So I guess he says he's married, but he says, hey, I interact with the toa, so he doesn't look silly. So, okay, all right.
Ai tau pehe ai kakai tonga. Ka mo e ai nga kakai pe ka po wa no fanki fiohi anga. He wai fanki fiohi anga ia. I he ngahi tuku whakaholo e whonua ke o toi kovia ngia i he tau a. Pea mo e whai kawa. Ka kuna ki whakahoko pēna o tolu. Kage. Ki si usio e tuhe nga pau toi ki tai mahindo pea toi e toi ai atu pe.
Hey, hey, Maria, tamai foi mapu ko ia. Kai ke ai hapu tu ke. Maria Fobcast. Maria. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So it's interesting, right? So what we're gonna do is we're not gonna go back looking at the time here. We're kind of coming up on a time to close out the podcast here with the live session. But my response to her is characterizing the toa as watered down prostitution. Okay. I think I'm trying to help her. I'm trying to give her kind of put it in her shoe. I think I'm understanding what she's saying. But there's, to she's trying to present the dangers of doing things purely for the exchange, especially if it has a sexual connotation to it for money. And she's associating it with the kava and the toa. But I don't know if that's a fair comparison to do. And she needs to separate, from my perspective, the bad actions that can happen with the toa and the kava with just appropriate behavior of social human beings, right? And also she is like the gentleman says, this Fobcast says, is like you have to take into account the choice of the toa, right? Like, and I'm not saying that if someone chooses to be a toa that promotes this kind of behavior towards them. No, what I'm saying is you choose to go to certain environments and it can lead to certain things. And if those environments are inappropriate and you think that it's leading into behaviors that are not aligned with what you think and what you believe, then maybe you shouldn't go there, right? And should set those boundaries up front. And if those boundaries are being violated, then do not stay there, right? Do not stay there, because the interpretation will be you're okay with it. And that's something that I think should be taken into account. The other problem that I kind of have with the whole issue is because bad things can happen somewhere, therefore it should be shut down. Social media has probably led to more inappropriate interactions, more sexual oppression or taken advantage of, and more evil things happening than any other thing that we have out there. Does that mean we should get rid of social media? Well, no, right? And though all those bad things happen on the internet and on social media, that doesn't mean we get rid of social media. What that means is we use the ideas that she's presenting of sexualizing things is bad, not listening to people when they object to certain things is bad, and to just kind of have that mentality of taking advantage of others, or objectifying them, male or female. um, that's we stop the bad behavior, regardless of whether it's at kava, regardless at the kalapu, or if it's a toa. It's the behavior that we're trying to stop, regardless of the situation. And I think that's where she makes a point, and I agree with her 100%. These behaviors are bad, but just because that bad behavior exists somewhere, that doesn't mean we need to get rid of everything, because if that's the case, we would stop TV, we would stop cell phones, we would stop everything, right? That becomes a totalitarian state. But we can engage in the ideas. I think I like her. If that's something she's passionate about and she wants to educate people about the dangers of toa and so forth, hey, get on the platform, share those ideas. I think I saw she's getting stories of toas who've had bad experiences. I'm all for that. Share those out there so that people are aware and they can make decisions for themselves, right? Um, but I can also tell you, you could probably go find some positive stories of toas, right? And they're saying that it was something that was positive and beneficial to them in a hard time, or in something they needed some cash for, and this was a way that they could obtain it in a legal and appropriate manner. So it's this is at the essence of this is, I guess it's related to how the discourse that the Polynesian Eyes podcast is trying to inject into the conversation of Polynesian history and the origins of the Polynesian civilization and all those things that are tied to it. Just because there may be a little tension, people are saying, no, you can't say that. You can't talk about that. You should stop that. And I understand that we don't want to cause tension and, quote unquote, raise the temperature in the discussions. But it would be also just as wrong to say no discussions are allowed because there might be a little tension. There might be a slight sense of offense, right? Because someone is going to say something that offends someone. And when I say offend, it's not because someone is saying something crude or bad or inappropriate. It's just someone says something that you disagree with. And because you are not used to being disagreed with, and you are not used to having your ideas or your position challenged, that therefore we should just stop all discussions. That's not an acceptable route either. Just kind of like this whole thing with Toa and inappropriate behavior at Toa. And because there's a possibility of that happen, and it has happened, therefore shut down Toa and the Kalapu and so forth. Well, the question now becomes, and I'm seeing some of the comments here online, like Mika here as a subscriber, a subscribed member of the Polynesianized podcast. He says, the married men is the ones that have deep pockets, though, right? Mika, the problem is, Mika, we live in a day and age now where if the women think that they should only be worried about the women, then they are in denial of the world we live in now. Eh? We live in a world now where plenty of people don't need the women either, right? And I've seen this with my own eyes. There's not so good behavior sometimes between mano a mano. And we don't want that either. So this is the thing I'm getting to. And I appreciate Akanesi and her perspective and her willingness to speak up. I appreciate Fobcast for sharing his perspective and why he thinks the Toa is an acceptable thing. But this is why we need to separate the behavior from what's going on. Because if we're just saying, oh, Toa is bad because it sexualizes women, well, we live in 2025. Males are sexualized, and there are behaviors that are just because it hasn't gotten into the Polynesian community yet. Well, when I say hasn't, it's already there. It's just not prolific like it is with our Western brothers and sisters. So is Akanesi going to be okay if the Toa is a dude? Right? And they're preying on the dude? Is that okay because he's a dude? It's like, no. Right? It's bad because it's bad behavior, regardless of whether the bad behavior is towards a male or a female, whether they're married or not married. It's just there's bad behavior. And so that's where I'm thinking we can get a little more nuanced in our discussion, and our approach to discussing these ideas and these challenges is really being articulate, being thoughtful, and listening to other people's perspectives, right? Akanesi should listen to Fobcast 801. And that doesn't mean she should concede to his ideas. No, but she should listen to it and say, hey, he has a point. Maybe there's a few things there that make sense that can be adopted into my position. And Fobcast 801 as well could look at Akanesi and say, yeah, we don't like that behavior either, right? We don't like that inappropriate behavior. But then, you have to define what that inappropriate behavior is. She had shown some stuff that she said was inappropriate, but maybe the Toa doesn't think it is. And those people over there, blah, blah, blah. But there's some gray area that is left up to the individuals. And then there's some clear black and white areas that we can all say, yeah, we're pretty sure that shouldn't happen, right? And each kalapu and each group and each individual needs to define those lines for themselves. They need to communicate that often and early, and then they need to make sure it's enforced. And if it's not, that's why we have law enforcement. This is why we have all these other things to take care of these things. We have a legal system. So with that being said, want to thank all of our supporters. Really appreciate it. Once again, if you want to support, subscribe. I'll make a short video on how to subscribe and contribute to the podcast and to the program and earn some perks, not only hopefully in content shortly, but more importantly, perks on your comments being highlighted. Appreciate everyone. As always, we always share. Stay curious, be bold, and don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Till next time, peace.